From victim to inmate, real lives of America's most notorious female offenders. Don't miss out on more true crime stories. Hit subscribe, like, share, and join the conversation in the comments. The room was silent except for the clinking of handcuffs. Cameras flashed as the courtroom doors opened, and all eyes turned toward her. Sarah Mitchell, once a soft-spoken nurse from Ohio, now branded one of America's most notorious female offenders. Her orange jumpsuit glowed under the harsh white lights as the judge read her sentence. Life in federal prison without parole. The crowd gasped. Sarah didn't cry, didn't speak, just stared ahead with empty eyes. But what no one knew was that the same woman now being locked away had once been a victim herself, beaten, controlled, and pushed beyond the breaking point. The day she snapped would change everything, and the truth of how she got here was far more complicated than the headlines ever told. Before the bailiff led her away, Sarah whispered something no one could hear, except the guard standing closest to her. His face turned pale. Later, he'd tell investigators that she said, "You have no idea what he made me do." That's where it all began. Just 3 years earlier, Sarah had been known around her small Ohio town as a kind, hardworking nurse who cared for the elderly. She had a quiet smile and never missed church on Sundays. But behind closed doors, life was a different story. Her husband, Derek, was a former construction worker with a short temper and a long list of police reports, all filed, then withdrawn, by Sarah herself. Every night, their neighbors could hear yelling. Some said they heard crying. Sarah would show up to work with bruises covered by makeup, always insisting she fell. Her coworkers wanted to help, but Sarah never accepted it. She was terrified of Derek and trapped by him. Then one night, something inside her broke. It started with Derek losing his job. The bills piled up, the fights got worse, and the house that once smelled of lavender now reeked of alcohol and fear. One stormy evening, Derek accused Sarah of cheating and threw her against the wall. She hit her head hard but didn't scream. Instead, she walked quietly to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and when he came toward her again, she did the unthinkable. When police arrived, Derek was gone. Sarah was sitting on the floor, her hands shaking, whispering, "I didn't mean to." The news exploded across the country. Nurse turns killer. What drove Sarah Mitchell to murder her husband? Some called her a monster. Others said she was finally free. But the story didn't end there. Because inside the walls of the prison where she was sent, Sarah would soon learn that her story wasn't unique. Many of the women around her had once been victims too, and some were far more dangerous than she could ever imagine. As the heavy steel doors slammed behind her on her first night in prison, a voice whispered from the next cell, "Welcome to the sisterhood, sweetheart." Sarah turned and saw a face she recognized from the news. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above as Sarah walked down the narrow cell block, the air heavy with the smell of bleach and metal. She clutched her thin blanket, trying to steady her breathing. Every door she passed revealed faces, women with hard eyes, tattooed arms, and quiet, watching stares. The guard led her to cell 214. "This is you," he said, unlocking the door. "Welcome to Grayfield Correctional." Inside sat the same woman who'd spoken to her the night before, Tanya Ruiz, a name Sarah knew too well. Tanya had been all over the news just 2 years ago, a former waitress from Texas turned bank robber who'd claimed she was forced into crime by her abusive boyfriend. Sarah remembered the headlines calling her the beauty and the bullet. Tanya smirked as Sarah entered. "Didn't think I'd see a good girl like you here," she said, crossing her arms. "What did you do, sweetheart?" Sarah didn't answer. She sat on the bottom bunk, staring at the cracks on the concrete floor. Tanya chuckled. "You'll learn quick. This place is full of women like us. Victims first, inmates second." That night, as the prison went quiet, Tanya told Sarah her story. How she'd met a man who promised to take care of her, then turned her into his getaway driver. How every robbery ended with him taking the cash and leaving her to face the police. Tanya's eyes burned with bitterness as she whispered, "He made me believe I didn't deserve better. By the time I realized I did, it was too late." Sarah felt something break inside her. Their stories were different, but the pain was the same. They were both women who had lost control of their lives long before they ever committed a crime. Days turned into weeks. Sarah learned the rhythm of prison life. The 5 a.m. wake-up call, the tasteless oatmeal, the long hours folding laundry in the workroom. But what she couldn't get used to was the sound of women crying quietly at night. One afternoon, Sarah was called to the warden's office. She assumed it was about her transfer request, but when she entered, 2 detectives were waiting. "Mrs. Mitchell," one said, flipping open a file. "We've reopened your case." Sarah's heart stopped. The detective slid a photograph across the table, a picture of a man. Her husband, Derek. But this time, he didn't look like he did the night she last saw him. He looked alive. The detective's voice was steady. "We have reason to believe Derek Mitchell might not be dead." The world spun around her. Every breath felt heavy. If Derek was alive, what had she confessed to? And who was buried in his place? The warden spoke softly. "We'll need you to tell us everything again, Sarah, from the beginning." Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at the photo. The man who'd made her life a nightmare might still be out there. And she wasn't safe anymore, not even behind bars. Sarah couldn't sleep that night. The image of Derek's face from the photograph haunted her mind. The man she thought she'd killed, the man she swore she saw lying lifeless on their kitchen floor, was possibly alive. She kept hearing his voice in her head, whispering the same cruel words he always did. "You'll never get away from me." By morning, her body felt numb. Tanya noticed it right away. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said. Sarah didn't answer. She just handed Tanya the folded paper the warden had given her. On it were the words, "Pending investigation. Do not discuss case details with inmates." But Sarah had to tell someone. Whispering, she said, "They think Derek is still alive." Tanya froze. Her eyes widened. "What? That's impossible. You said." "I know what I saw," Sarah interrupted, her voice shaking. "I know what I did. I was there." For days, the prison buzzed with rumors. Guards talked in corners, and even the toughest inmates whispered when Sarah passed by. Some said Derek had faked his death to frame her. Others said it was a mix-up, a body misidentified. But one thing was clear, Sarah's case wasn't over. A week later, detectives returned. They brought her to a small gray interview room. A recorder sat on the table. The older detective leaned forward and said, "Sarah, we found something. The DNA at the crime scene doesn't match your husband. It belongs to a man named Carl Jensen, an ex-con who disappeared the same night." Sarah blinked, confused. "Carl Jensen? I don't know him." The detective nodded slowly. "We think Derek set you up. He may have staged the scene, used someone else's body, and vanished." Her breath caught in her throat. Derek had always told her she was nothing without him. And now, even in her prison cell, he still controlled her life. She whispered, "He wanted me to take the fall." The detective sighed. "And you did." That night, back in her cell, Sarah stared at the ceiling. Tanya reached down from the top bunk. "Listen," she said, "you might have been a victim once, but you don't have to stay one. You've got to fight." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since her arrest, she felt a spark, a tiny, fragile bit of hope. Weeks later, her story made national headlines again. Wrongfully convicted woman may have been framed by missing husband. The FBI began a manhunt for Derek Mitchell. But Sarah remained behind bars, waiting, not as a broken victim this time, but as someone ready to face whatever came next. Then one morning, a guard rushed into the cell block, out of breath, holding a piece of paper. "They found him," he said. Sarah's heart skipped. "Where?" she whispered. The guard looked at her solemnly. "In Mexico. He's been living under a false name. And Sarah, he's in custody." The sound that came out of her was part sob, part laughter. For the first time in years, the weight began to lift. Months later, she stood once again in a courtroom, this time not in an orange jumpsuit, but in plain clothes. The judge's voice was calm as he read her release order. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, "you are free to go." As the doors opened, sunlight hit her face. For a long moment, She just stood there, breathing, blinking, alive. The same reporters who once called her a killer now shouted her name as she stepped into the world again. She didn't answer any questions. She just said one quiet thing before walking away. "I may have been a victim once, but not anymore." The cameras flashed. The story of Sarah Mitchell, the woman who went from victim to inmate and finally to survivor, became one of America's most powerful tales of justice, redemption, and truth. And as the sun dipped behind the courthouse, Sarah disappeared into the crowd, free at last, and ready to live the life that had once been stolen from her.